If I got this image to look close to what I wanted, I could come in. It looks like I actually did on this one because I see the blues were turned down for saturation. Let me turn them back up by double clicking. Yeah, do you see that little area on the left side down here where the cloud is? Thought it became a little too saturated, so I could bring down my saturation on my blues to mellow that out. Maybe I want these yellowish oranges to be more prominent, so I push those up. And then the red in this area, red or orange, I might grab the little donut thing, click on it to see what would it adjust. Looks like the reds. And see if that looks better with more saturation or less. That type of thing. So after I've adjusted my white balance, I will frequently go to the HSL area in Lightroom and fine-tune the individual colors in the image, because oftentimes there'll be one particular color that gets to become overdone, whereas everything else hasn't quite reached its full potential. As far as I remember, I might have had a few of those in my Africa images. Let me see if I can find one by chance right here. Close that left side off. All right, so here, this image I made to be more colorful, and I liked what happened to the greens near the horizon line. I like what happened to the yellows at the bottom, but if you look at the sky, to me that looks artificial. It's just overdone there. So if I go to the Develop module, and I come in here to saturation, I can click right on that area, mellow it out a bit, so it doesn't look quite as artificial. Might not look as dramatic to have it mellowed out, but for me, if I saw it in a print or something, I'm like, I've never seen the sky like that, and I'd be distracted by it. So I can mellow it out. Then I can come into other areas, maybe the greens I want to have even more colorful. I can click on them and push them up. One thing that I commonly do to my greens within a photograph is I shift their color. I find I don't like how greens are rendered in a lot of digital images. So if I turn off that little donut, then I can click on my image to zoom up. Let's see what we get. Okay. To me, oftentimes the greens within a picture look too yellow. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll go to the HSL. I'm going to work on them individually because that's how I usually do. I only use all when I'm like reviewing pictures and wanting to see if all of them were adjusted. But what I usually do is I go to hue, grab the little donut thing, and I'll push the hue up, and that'll make it less yellow, more green. The problem is, once I've done that, it can look artificially green because usually it's overly colorful. So then I go to saturation, and I'll click on the same area and bring the saturation down. And I find I often like the look better. I'll choose undo a few times. See if you can see the difference. And in fact, if I use this feature we haven't talked about yet, I'll redo those, and then I'll use the history here. Okay, here's before. Watch the greens. There's after. Do you see the difference? Actually, I think it's here and here. And sometimes I like that look better. Not always, depends on the image, but it is not an uncommon adjustment for me to push things a little more towards a pure green and make them a little bit less colorful to render them differently. So this is another huge panorama. If you want to see here's the subject, and then look at how tiny he is once we zoom out. So that was stitched in Photoshop and then brought into Lightroom. But even after I've stitched a panorama, I usually do bring it into Lightroom and fine-tune it, because then I can fine-tune it as a whole. So the HSL is, I find to be very...
Ah, fuck.
And it would be what's known as the adjustment brush, but it's something we're not talking about until tomorrow. So tomorrow you'd see how to do that. But it's known as the adjustment brush.
All right, great.
Okay. Any others by chance? Yeah.
So I was just going to ask if you have go-to adjustments for the HSL sliders that you always do on every image, or is it really image by image?
It is usually image by image.